Everybody out there, you're going to be so lucky today. You're going to get a double dose of Brian Wang. Due to technical difficulties last night, I was unable to publish the program that we did last night, but you don't want to miss it. It will be out at 7:45 tonight. Brian, that was one of the most fun shows I think we've ever done. Uh,
Okay.
I think we broke a lot of news on that particular
Mhm.
round. And so anyway, watch for that later tonight. I don't usually do this at the beginning of the show, but I think I really needed to let y'all know you don't want to miss that one. Okay, Brian, the Fed needs to be reorganized. Multiple members need to be fired. They've proven themselves today to be completely incompetent.
Okay.
Okay, that is
Okay.
my theme for today. We'll talk about Tesla later. And there's some big news about Tesla later today, but this was crazy today, and I'm
Yeah.
not. Anyway, Chairman Powell says he's going to keep the interest rates the same, 100 basis points higher than the neutral rate.
Right.
Everybody agrees the neutral rate should be 3.3 right now, and the rate is 4.3. But
Mhm.
then here's what happened. And you've probably heard a little bit about this over the course of today, even though I know you didn't watch the actual program, his reporting with the in the what do you call it, the news conference.
Yeah.
He says that the Fed has no opinion at all about AI and the impact on the economy.
Okay.
He recognizes that AI might have an impact on inflation and on productivity, therefore inflation. He recognizes that it might have an impact on jobs. He
Mhm.
talked about both of those things. And then he said, but we don't have an opinion on that.
Okay.
100% of the reason that they're not reducing tariffs reducing interest rates right now is because they do have an opinion on tariffs.
Right. Right. Okay.
This is making my head explode.
Mhm.
AI is the most important thing that has happened in maybe ever.
Right. Right.
I mean, people are talking about it being the great introduction to massive wealth, worldwide wealth, et cetera, et cetera. The
Mhm.
numbers that Cathie Woods and others put on it in terms of increasing, and you
Mhm.
put on it in terms of increasing our GDP by 7% a year or 10% a year. I mean, it's just astronomical. And people all over the internet are talking about how it might cut, jobs at all levels and what's going
Right.
to happen, how those are going to be replaced. And he acknowledged that.
Mhm. Right.
And then he says, but we don't have an opinion.
Okay.
So,
So, yeah, to not describe it all, like it's going to, they say, increase productivity. It's going to cause job dislocations in some areas. It
right.
probably already has. So, even looking in the rearview mirror, they're data driven. They should say, okay, things are already happening, right? It's already causing increase in the investment. Like there are effects already occurring, right? But I've already said for a long time, and if you look at our previous videos on this when we talk about the Fed, is that I think Jerome Powell is incompetent, right? I've said that before. So that aspect is not changed. I've said he's incompetent before, I say he's incompetent now, and that's also late. That they should have been cutting before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you say, okay, it's still uncertain. They say that they're 1% above neutral rate, so they should be a half point down, just to be kind of like wait and see, just to track that. Yes.
And I hate to insult both of us right now, but
Mm.
I'm going to say that he and the Fed are acting like boomers.
Okay.
They're worried about Taft-Hartley or something, or whatever that bill was, whatever that thing that happened back in a previous century. They're worried
Yeah.
about what tariffs did in the past. They've got inflation down very, very close to their number, in including the fact that they only increased the number today by 0.6%. So they went from 2.5 estimate for the end of the year to 3.1. Now
Mm.
that's the estimate that they're making is worst case, we
Yeah.
go to 3.1. And then they also said it'll be transitory, more than likely, almost
Yeah.
certainly transitory, which is repeating what he said before. Therefore, it would seem to me that the tariffs are not that critical in terms of either inflation and or jobs,
Right.
but AI is.
Right. Right.
So it's like the modern thing, AI, he can't wrap his arms around. He can't even put a committee together to come up with an opinion.
Hmm.
But on tariffs, which is far less consequential in his own words, that's how they're making the decision this month not to not to decrease rates.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I agree that's completely wrong. And the the impacts are clearly going to be like internet, smartphone, PCs, and that kind of stuff. Like you've had these technological replatforming things, like all of the top venture capitalists, all the savvy investors can see that this is a bigger thing than these other known impacts. And you say that it's AI is that like internet and PCs and smartphones, but just bigger. It's like cloud, but bigger. It's like all those things, but the big. So it's like your minimum is a certain level of one X, 2X, those other things, which yeah,
And if he's data driven, he keeps on talking about how he's data driven. The eight largest companies in the world, who are all US companies,
yeah.
are all being driven, and the price of their stock is being driven by AI. And the number one largest amounts of money, capital investment that's being made right now is into AI.
Right.
And yet they don't have an opinion on
Hmm.
how this is going to impact inflation or impact jobs.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, all right, I'll move on, but I won't. I'm only going to move on a little bit. They
Hmm.
also said that they recognized that the reconciliation budget will impact things. They didn't have
Hmm.
any opinion on that.
Hmm.
Now let's see. The budget is going to reduce the amount that the government is spending. It's going to bring in X amount of tax dollars, which is going to change things with regard to the taxation. It's got a whole bunch of stuff with regard to reducing the number of employees in government. So we know that it's impacting inflation and we know it's impacting jobs, but they don't have an opinion.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
impacting their decision today.
Hmm. Right. Right.
Oh, okay. It goes on. It gets worse.
Hmm.
They said, he says it out loud, that they recognize that the fact that we're not importing any illegal immigrants at all,
Hmm.
no illegal immigrants coming across the border at all, is impacting housing and impacting
Hmm.
jobs.
Hmm.
But they have
Right.
an opinion on that. They don't have, that's not impacting how they're making a decision today with regard to lowering interest rates, even though not having not having any immigration and having maybe out migration would definitely be reducing the cost of housing. There's no way to get around that. You're reducing the demand on housing. You're reducing the demand on lots of sectors of the economy, which would tend
Mm.
to be deflationary as well as potentially slow down the overall economy, but it might also mean more jobs for the workers who are here. And he acknowledged all that,
Right.
but it didn't have any impact on what they're doing with regard to interest rates today.
Right. Right.
Anyway, so I don't know. Does it sound political to you, Brian, at all, that the only thing that they're making the decision on 100%, and you just listen to him, all he talks about tariffs, 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 says that they're transitory, says that they are only going to impact by 0.6%, which is very close to my number that I've had for months and months and months. I said
Right.
between 0.4 and 0.8. And so their number is my number. And yet, does it sound maybe political here that they're just attacking the POTUS? It's attacking Trump and saying, because of tariffs, we're not going to reduce the interest rates.
Yeah, I think it's aligned with the legacy media and this other narrative. It's yeah, I don't see like one tariffs are going to get to more solutions. Like you getting closer to deal with China. Other countries are going to come to deal soon, and they have to. Like the 90-day pause is coming up. So, um, but I guess what it'll be another month or 2 months before they can make a decision based upon finally things happening. Like if I guess if the tariffs come in with impact of less than the zero point 0.6, like it ends up being,
Right.
0 or zero point 0.3, then they'll it won't be till September that they'll have to do like two cuts or something like that. But then the fact that they're keeping things high is causing strain to people in debt and banks, all that kind of stuff. So um, I think it's again more negatives from them being cautious.
Yeah, being cautious or being political. I think they need to be.
Yeah.
I wish I knew if there was a way to just completely fire them all and start over. All right, let's talk about something more fun.
Mhm.
I'm just outraged.
Yes.
There was announced today that there is now somebody running the semi-truck division for Tesla in Europe.
Okay.
This is the Brian Wang department. I mean, if
Mhm.
Bradford Ferguson is the energy guy, the energy storage guy, you are the semi truck guy.
Mhm.
Nobody else. Nobody talks about semi trucks, Brian. I don't know what to make of it because I am
Mhm.
all about the semi trucks too. But have you taken a look at it recently? Do you still think there's potential for 3 million semi trucks a year? And what would it take to get there? What is the world missing? Is Elon thinking about it, do you think? Do you think we'll ever hear about a plan for semi trucks the way we've heard about the plan for robots or the plan for energy, et cetera? Do you think we'll get a plan?
I think the big thing for it is robo trucking. Now, when you solve robotaxi, then you pretty much automatically also solve robo trucking. By robo trucking, you can replace the truck driver, and you can increase the number of shifts that a truck can operate on from one to like four potentially. Instead of 40 hours in a week, you can go to like 160 hours in a week. And the fact that you're driving at all hours um, is something that would, uh, increase the value of the truck. You can make more deliveries and all that kind of stuff. So, but the limiting factor on that is that you would need to get a lot of energy and storage deployment for a lot of mega charging out there. Um, so they're supposed to scale up and start producing mass production second half of this year for the Nevada factory, which looking at it, the factory looks close to being done. So then they can start producing them by the many thousands. Probably takes at least a year to scale up to the 50,000 per year. So they have some time to do it. They can do some stuff with mega charging where you take a existing charging area and combine two stalls into one, where you're charging at 400, 500 kilowatts, and then stack them together to get to the 1 megawatt of charging. Um, and then but that would really start needing to roll out a lot quicker in terms of the charging aspect. Once they start once you have robot trucking, the demand will be insane for those trucks. Because the only trucks that could do that would be the Tesla trucks could operate robotically. And their value is on the order of 40,000 to $150,000 per year per truck from by replacing a truck driver times three or four,
Right.
right? And so then if you increase that usage, that's the majority of the 20% of oil that goes to driving trucks would then have to go to electricity um, during that way. Um, Europe has more trucks than the United States. Um, and then both of them combined are only about 25% relative to 75% in Asia. So if it's 3 million total, about 500,000 or so would be the US and Europe
Hmm.
combined annual demand. But then you could have a situation where you would want to um, make the conversion faster um, to get to the world of robot trucking. But you need to have a lot of power generation to uh, to fully support that.
Now, theoretically, one of the things you and I never talked about before on this, and maybe you've thought up through, is that it should be similar to the car. Most semi trucks are only driven about, I think it's 80,000 a year. Is that right?
Yeah,
You
sounds about
think
right. Yeah.
something around 80,000? And yet, if they were really being driven 24/7, if they're, I mean, and that's never going to happen, but let's just say something on the order of 3 times or 4 times as much on average. Now, some trucks are already, they got, 2 drivers or whatever, and they
Team
go
driving.
peak drive and they try to go 16 hours or whatever. But let's just say on average, they're going to be dramatically more use of these vehicles that at least initially it won't take as many trucks to transfer all trucks to autonomous.
Right. So in theory, instead of like 20 million, 30 million large trucks, you could get by with 5 million total. Which if you wanted to convert in 5 years, you still want to produce 1 million per year. But I think demand will increase. That if
Mhm.
I'm dropping the cost of delivering goods from 10 to 15% of the price of the goods down to 2% or something like that, or 1%, then it's like a big tax cut, which would, increase demand. Um, Also, it will take away from rail and it'll take away from air delivery. The fact that I could have a truck and drive 24 hours and get from perhaps from Florida over to California in one day potentially if I drove a little bit faster. Certainly in a day and a half, 30 some hours.
Yeah,
Two 2 days. Yeah.
it might also take pressure off the Panama Canal because you could actually have, I've had situations where when I was trying to import, and there was some kind of a problem at LA ports, that you
Mhm.
bring it New Orleans or you bring it into a Florida port and then truck it across the United States. But that was like a 5-day deal as
Yeah.
opposed to through the Panama Canal. It could be a much faster. But this is potentially, as you're saying, you might be able to have a truck that goes cross country in a day and a half.
Right, right. And then also the incredible efficiency of it just means that all your operations could be structured around this very fast, efficient, low-cost supply chain.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I thought that was really super interesting that Europe is now on the drawing board. They're actually hiring for it. They also made a bunch of hires for California. I mean, for Reno, a bunch of
Mhm.
hires for the truck division went up on the postings today.
Mhm.
Okay, good news out of Europe also as a transition. Also, good news out of Europe. 4.3 thousand Tesla sales reported for the week of June 9 to 15, and that's 12.12 higher than the previous week and the best week of the year. And the quarter after 11 weeks is only down 5.6 quarter over quarter and 13.6 year over year. So we're starting to catch up. Now, this was in 60% of the countries in Europe, which is the ones that report frequently. So
Mhm.
maybe Europe's not going to be as bad as we thought. Is there any chance?
Um, yeah, I think their economy should hopefully pick up some. Like they can't stay depressed forever. Like even if you were having cycles, you'd have some fluctuation up and down. So hopefully their things are getting better for them.
All right. So Elon also announced today that this is not related to Tesla. Well, it's related to Tesla. I think it's very, very important for Tesla. But he said that XAI is biased in favor of liberal thinking. He hates that.
Mhm.
But I think he would hate it if it was biased in favor of conservative thinking. He wants it to be neutral. And he says they are really working hard to get that done. And you know what it reminded me of, Brian? I know I'm a lot older than you, but I bet you guys talked about this too. And that was in the early days of computers, all we talked about was GIGO,
Oh,
G-I-G-O,
what? Oh,
G-I-G,
garbage in, garbage out. Yes.
garbage in, garbage out. Well,
Yeah.
this is a perfect example of garbage in, garbage out. It's kind of like sending your darn AI system, you're sending it to Harvard to get trained.
Yeah.
So what do you expect? The vast majority of professional writing out there between the newspapers and the universities, and then throw in Wikipedia, it's
Mhm.
all liberally biased. So
Mhm.
you have any thoughts? You're kind of a computer geek. What kind of things can they do to get rid of that liberal bias? What would you do to your son coming out
Mhm.
of college who has now been messed up by those professors? By the way, where does your son go?
He goes to Purdue.
He goes to Purdue. They're pretty liberal there, I think.
No, no, it's engineering school mainly,
Oh,
and then he's
engineering.
studying
So
AI.
that's
He's studying
better.
AI.
That's
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he came home and he was like, I'm going to vote for, some liberal person, but anyway, how do we fix AI so that it's not liberally biased?
Um, you have to have a foundation where like I can read as much liberal information of stuff as I want, and I'm not gonna shift, my bias toward that after I have a foundation that is what I think is logical and not biased, right? So if you start off by getting that foundation of logic and having rational thought, right, then you can avoid being swayed and say, okay, like here's I focus on facts, numbers, and those kinds of non-emotional aspects of things, and also looking at using taking information, using it to make a prediction, and seeing, okay, the bias of the fact that I take the information and then make a judgment and put it together in a way that doesn't predict what is the correct thing. So if you have that kind of um, checking of how it's analyzing things, right? To verify, am I do I have bias because I'm making the wrong prediction based on a set of facts? So if I have a
Mm,
set of facts, I'm going to predict, some if I roll stuff back and say, okay, using 10-year-old information, predict something that happened 9 years ago,
mm,
right?
yeah.
And then and then by going through the time sequence, I can say, okay, if I analyze it this way and I'm always to the left of whatever the result is, right? Then I have a bias, right? So that's how I think you would check and validate for bias is to do a time sequence thing and say, let me forget about the last X years and start moving through and using the stuff I know from beforehand, then predict something, right? And and, and by fine tuning yourself that way, then you can say, okay, um, I'm always underestimating. I'm always overestimating. Same thing, if you're over optimistic or pessimistic,
Mhm,
is to say, okay, if I'm trying to predict the result, and it's like, I'm making the adjustment of like I'm trying to throw the dartboard.
mm.
I'm always, you know,
High. Yeah, whatever.
high or low. I'm missing up. I need to then shift my target. So that's how you get rid of the bias is to throw the darts, figure out if I'm clustering up in the wrong spot, and then make that adjustment.
All right. Well, I was very happy to see that Elon thinks he's got a method. I hope he's heard you just giving your advice with regard to that. So we'll see. We'll see if Grok can get more neutral.
Mhm.
I'm often able to talk Grok out of his, her, its liberal position. I'm often able to convince it that it needs to rethink things. But if I
Mhm.
was just going in there and didn't have a lot of knowledge on a subject matter, it would commonly be giving me really, really liberal results.
So it's not just liberal results or there's also optimism, pessimism. There's also it has a certain belief.
Right.
Like I today I was having it make a table of like, um, AI, top AI developer compensation versus sports and entertainment, right? And the reason I did that was because Sam Altman had a video where he said that Meta, Zuckerberg, was trying to poach OpenAI top developers, and they were offering them $100 million signing bonuses,
100 million.
100 million, and $100 million per year in compensation, right? So I wanted to, so I just put an article up, describing the fact
Did
that
you apply? Did you apply?
uh, if I was qualified for that, we would not be talking right now. So, the so it's comparing, okay, sports salaries, how much does
Yeah,
Shohei Ohtani, top baseball players, top
right.
football players, and all that kind of stuff. But then both Grok and Perplexity, which I think uses Claude,
Sure.
were saying, okay, it didn't believe it. It was saying that the AI developers only make $1 million a year and that kind of stuff. And I said, Sam Altman said this in a video. I don't care what your current information is. Believe, well, assume that this is true,
I see.
and then make a table,
I see.
and also after I also add in thing about like and shut up about your previous information, right?
Yeah,
Because otherwise it will try and resist and go back to what it knew before. It's like
right.
you're talking to someone, debating them, and
Sure.
they're saying, I believe this based on what I knew before. And if I say that that's wrong based on this, I want you now to assume this is wrong. Don't assume he's lying or whatever. So that when it had a bias that way, you have to say, I understand what you're saying. Forget that. Assume this
Right.
in order to like do that adjustment of getting the site to where I want to be. Because I don't want to debate it. If you try and like shove it through and argue about it, I found it can waste a lot of time. It can
Gotcha.
take multiple, many, many tries to get there. I prefer to say, make it these assumptions, forget the
Right.
rest, and then move on. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So in other words, next time that I say that Randy Kirk is brilliant and it was to have an argument with me, I should say, just assume that that's true. Is that
Right.
that's
Right. Assume that's true. Assume what it wants to be the truth. Start with these assumptions, ignore the rest, and also sometimes just say, don't argue about it. Because sometimes they'll try to talk you out of the
I see.
assumptions,
Yes.
right? And I
Yes.
say, and shut up about your disagreement about it. And
Right.
then move.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because my wife will try to talk me out of that also. But my
right.
mother says I'm right. So I don't know who
Yeah,
to believe.
that's right. Yeah.
I think you responded to this today on X. PT Truby, or no, P Truby says the Magic 8 Ball says yes. Giga Texas just added a new exit door and ramp in addition to the two existing ones for Model Y and Cybertruck. They have also stockpiled about 21 car transport trucks that they are not currently using. Sounds like Tesla is gearing up for something big. And credit goes to Joe Tegmeyer for the picture. We don't have the picture. So am I right? Did you comment on that one?
Yeah. I spotted the transport trucks and the new exit door ramp. So I commented about that on XAI. So this combined with the 1 week shutdown that's coming up for Austin certainly looks like it could be the new car coming out. That's certainly how I interpret it.
Okay, all right. So I've never seen them be quite this good at secret keeping. Reminds me of the early days of Apple. But how do you keep a? Oh, you're having trouble hearing me. A. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I had a headphone problem. Could you repeat what you just said?
So I said they're doing a very good job of keeping this product secret. It reminds me
Yeah,
of the early days of Apple.
yeah, yeah. It's very annoying. I'm concerned that they're keeping secret because they're not ready. I know they don't want to Osborne things with their current sales, but I've my identification of the what appeared to be a smaller Model Y from video before. I still think that's what's going to happen. So hopefully that happens soon with the moves that appear to be happening. But it looks like even with the 1 week shutdown, things may slip into July before we see that new vehicle. But fingers crossed it's before end of June.
All right. Well, now let's go ahead and talk about Tesla and the stock price and all that. We saw a very nice run up this morning into the 228 range. I'm sorry, 328 range. It looked like it was going to have a very big day. And then all of a sudden, either the profit takers came in or I don't know what, who knows? You can never be sure what anything's going on. So I identified it this morning and said, hey, maybe the FOMO is finally starting. What do you think's going to happen, Brian? We only got one day left, one trading day before Sunday. Are we not going to get any FOMO? Are we going to get some FOMO on Friday? Or will we have to wait now until the darn things are actually, taking riders?
Which could be Sunday, right? If
Could be
they
Sunday.
do, if they don't delay, and then the 22nd, which is Sunday.
Right.
So given it's only one day, it doesn't seem it could be that much of a move. It could be, maybe like get back up at 3:30
Right.
and then kind of like hang there, see what happens Sunday, and then move on Monday or not. The we're trying to do this little wedge, so it's moving up 330 down 300-ish, that kind of wedge, which is squeezing tighter and tighter.
Mm,
So that would suggest either and we're targeting towards like an early next week, Monday, Tuesday breakout to the up, top or bottom, right? So it's looking like technically that the move doesn't happen till after the robot tax weekend, assuming there's no delay that it does
right.
happen. But certainly it would also suggest that if things didn't happen next week, then we would likely fall down out of that. So
Out of that level. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Definitely. And then, of course, we got the macro where the war obviously is impacting it right now in Israel. But there's, and we won't go into it now because that's what we talk a lot about that in the show. That'll be at 7:45 tonight. But the impact of the macro right now seems to also be holding it back a bit.
right.
So if the war ends over the week, well, okay, no, let's look at it this way. Tesla, a lot of people thought that this would be a sell on the news event,
Mhm.
but we haven't had the FOMO going in
Right.
unless you count the fact that we're already at 323 or whatever. Maybe that is the FOMO.
Mhm.
And maybe that's a realistic number going in, and that 488 never was realistic. It was just, crazy emotionalism gone wild.
Mhm.
And a very, very, very risk on market, extremely high risk on market. Where do you fall in that line of thinking?
Um, the rest of the market we're close to all highs again. So um, I don't think the optimism around Tesla was that much more like 480. I think that that level of optimism around Tesla, that with all those things that are going to be happening soon, robotaxi rolling out, starting to scale significantly, getting it to over 1,000 units should happen next month or two. The new car should happen. That when those things happen, that especially because people are not expecting it, like all the betting markets, I think they're only at 50-50 or so
Wow.
for a robotaxi coming out. Tesla robotaxi coming out the next few months, and then I think only a little bit over 50% by the end of the year.
Wow.
But and that's not even at large volume. That's just in any form at all.
Any fun at all.
Right. So that would indicate that the public and the general um, market analysts are not making an assumption that there's going to be this huge successful rollout. And then if it is, the expectation is that it will be many years before it's a major factor. Like who is it? Jeremy Lefebvre says it'll be 5 years before it's going to be. So he's an investor on YouTube who's previously owned quite a fair bit of Tesla, and many others I think are not talking like it's going to be this full ARK Invest robotaxi world, right? So that is not priced in. The fact that there's some level of robotaxi priced in of like the small amount, I don't think if it does happen the way we see it happening over the next few months, where they get to 5,000, 10,000 units before the end of the year, and then get to 1 million next year, that is not priced in.
Okay, so let's start from first principles.
Mhm.
What a concept.
Yeah.
First principles. Is there any way in the world that Elon Musk will allow the robotaxis to roll out on Sunday unless he thinks they're 100% ready to go?
Yeah. He's going to only roll them out. They're 100% ready to go. He's concerned about the long-term big picture, not hitting some arbitrary dates.
Right. So if they roll out on Sunday, we can assume that Elon Musk, in his big brain, believes that, yeah, there's going to be an occasional vehicle that's going to run into a curb, or who knows, they might even hit a dog or something. I mean, we don't know. There's going to be people have accidents, and other cars can cause the accidents, or something gets in the way of the vehicle and it has an accident because it's avoiding what's getting in its way. But I think it's just reasonable, and any investor who thinks differently, I think, needs to re-examine that thought, is that Elon is not going to put these out on Sunday unless he believes they're ready to go.
Right.
If they're ready to go, and this is the part that drives me nuts, if they're ready, what stands in the way? Nothing.
Nothing stands in the way. If they're ready, then you will rapidly scale to 1 million vehicles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because there's nothing. People talk about regulations and whatnot,
Mhm.
but if they work,
Mhm.
then the regulations are going to just go away. I mean,
Right.
just all you have to do is show the data.
Right. Yeah.
And
If they're safer than human,
yeah,
and particularly safer than humans with autopilot driver assist,
right,
then because that is potentially 10, 20 times safer than the average US driver. Then, as Elon said, it's immoral not to get them out there to save their lives and prevent the injuries.
right. So at that point, it would, and it looks like at least China and maybe Europe are now starting to get a little more aligned with trying to move these approvals up.
Right. Yeah, because it will be an economic impact. China has 300,000 road deaths each year, 10 times more than we do.
Yeah.
And it's 7% of their GDP from injuries and other stuff. So,
What?
yeah,
7% of their GDP.
right,
Wow. Holy.
right.
And
Yeah,
the fact that they are allowing Tesla, after all, to send their data out
right.
and to use their data center there in China
Mhm.
for accumulating the data. I mean, this is huge.
Right. If it works, then and they release, then I'm confident, I've been confident that that's going to be a pretty fast move up. I would certainly think, my over and under would be at least 10,000 in the Tesla fleet by the end of this year. And to get to the full rollout to all the other cars and stuff
Right.
from millions of vehicles
Because
this year.
10,000 really wouldn't be a significant, I mean, it wouldn't really be that hard to get to.
Yeah.
Because even without doing the, what do you want to call it, the Airbnb version, even
Mm.
without releasing it to us,
Yeah.
between now and the end of the year, I mean, we make just over 1 million vehicles in the United States a year.
Right. No, we're right.
Just
Last year it was
just under
700,000 or something like that.
700,000.
750,000. So
So,
this year, if we get I think we're maybe at 10% above that, maybe.
yeah,
But if we have the new vehicle, then we
yeah.
get over 1 million this year.
All right, but so all I'm saying is you take 10,000 out of 700,000. It's not a big deal.
Right,
Okay, just give us a couple days production. We'll put those out.
right.
It's not a significant number. And then if you're talking about if they do start to release it at all in Europe, again, same thing. They've got way more capacity in Berlin than they're using at this point. So
Right.
they decide to try one country or two countries, they can easily pull product off the lines.
Mm,
So, all right, okay, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. I keep having a hard time trying to figure out what the resistance to this investment is, because
mhm,
like, except for Optimus, it's potentially the biggest product of all times. Therefore, it has the biggest upside of all times. And it seems like the downside is fairly low.
mhm,
But people keep talking about it as being this risky investment at this point.
mhm,
And smart people, and I think Gary Black is smart. Smart people like Gary Black are on the sidelines right
mhm. Right,
now.
right, right.
I just don't get it.
Yeah, so it's a lack of belief in it, and it's also Tesla has not made it as easy to invest and hold where, if we were growing car deliveries,
Yeah,
from 1.8 million to 2.5 million to 3 million over the last 2 years, then it'd been easy. Okay, everything's growing, everything's all good. But because it's coming from a challenging, difficult time, challenges in Europe, challenges in China, all the Chinese car companies that are doing terrible, right? So that is uh, putting an overlay that makes it tougher because it's like I have to, if robotaxi works, then it's great. If it doesn't, then it's sideways, and potentially it could easily go down if um, more bad stuff happens, macro, et cetera, like that.
right. Okay, well, one of the pieces of good news today is that the bonds did relax a little bit. They're not quite as crazy. Let's see, there is no pre-market, of course, today, but we ended up at 4.391. So at least
Mm,
not at 4.5 anymore, or
mm,
even higher than 4.5. So 4.391. Um, the auctions went pretty well. There's a lot of talk. I've read a couple of articles recently that are talking about the fact that maybe people are putting their investments in overseas markets rather than the U.S. market, as the dollar is down a little bit. But when I look at the dollar, it's not that far off the recent highs. It's down a couple of percent, but it's not like it's
mm,
10% or 20%.
right.
Um, are you thinking about the bonds at all? Are you thinking about, what the mystery is of how they're staying this high?
Um, I haven't been thinking about it. I just have been assuming that when certain things get fixed in terms of tariffs, in terms of the global deals of the next few months, I'm also expecting some kind of either neutralization of the Iranian regime or a peace deal. You know,
Mhm.
so either they're neutralized by defeat or they're neutralized by war. Either way, they're neutralized. Then that would open the way for lower oil prices, other macro improvements, and I think it also would put pressure onto China and Russia to get things resolved, which would also then make more pressure to resolve the other tariff countries, right? So I'm expecting the dam to break over the next 2 or 3 months, and then that will take care of the interest rate being high.
So uncertainty might be the thing that's keeping the bonds where they are. And you're saying as we get more and more certainty about tariffs, war, and then you didn't add, but I'll add the big bad budget. I mean, sorry, the big beautiful budget.
Right. Right. Yeah. If spending goes down, all the other things, like lack of wars mean also less spending,
Right.
right? Not giving $100 million to Ukraine, not giving 50 billion, $100 billion to Israel, and having that, more money come back because of more investment, more other activity, then that would all be a good thing.
Did you see Trump today? He said that they called him from Treasury and they said, where'd all this money come from? We don't know what to do. He says, well, we got 88 billion from tariffs that we weren't expecting. But I
Mhm.
doubt if you got that call, but it's pretty funny.
Mhm.
Speaking of Trump, he's sitting with 56% overnights on Rasmussen, and one of the other national polling companies came in with 54%. But
Mhm.
all the left-leaning polls have him at like underwater. Here we go again.
Mhm. Right. Right. So the polls always had that the bias like leading up to the election, and we knew which ones were right. Rasmussen and the Atlas Intel and stuff were right, and the other ones were wrong. So they're back to and they've been incorrect from right after the election. They stayed, with a gap between what the correct polls were
Right.
and what the other ones are. Right. And then if we get these fixes, like, the right track, wrong track kind of thing,
Right.
where if, something that's been broken in the Middle East, like Iran, the big problem with their nukes, if that all goes away over the course of another week or something like that, then that I think can only be positive.
The rest of the markets today were fairly flat. Oil, whoops, I just lost it. Yeah, I lost everything. Here we go. Oil was sitting at $75.29. So that's Texas Intermediate, pretty flat. Natural gas down a little bit, but still close to $4. And gold down a little bit, but 3,393, almost 3,400. Silver almost at all-time highs. So most of the asset classes are pretty close to all-time highs, except for bonds. Bitcoin 105, but it's like, that's not a bad number.
Hmm. Yep.
So it seems like and I'll do this one last. I brought it up last night with Nicholas. Um, a couple of the CNBC guys were talking last night, and I think I was among the first to talk about this. Is earnings estimates for second quarter earnings are being revised upward.
Okay.
This is really good news because
Right.
the stock market being up at all-time highs, not quite, but almost there, maybe having a hard time pushing through to new all-time highs because it's already kind of stretched on the PEs.
Hmm.
But if we get a bunch of adjustments upward, and that's what apparently is happening on the estimates for the uh, uh, I mean, they'll start announcing them second week of July. We'll start getting a lot of these banks and others will start coming in second week of July. If they turn out to be good with good guidance, we could see an explosion, maybe 5% up from here.
Yeah, yeah. I think the bias is towards, I think, more good news happening, and or the stopping of bad news, which is the same thing.
Yeah, 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 indeed. Yes. I don't know which I like better.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, Brian. I think that covers it for me. Did I leave anything out that was on your mind today?
Um, there's the talk about Grok 3.5. Elon saying that is looking like it's substantially better than all the other models. So just a question of when they can release that. If it does become better, which my projection based upon the larger amount of training compute that they have, that would be a hugely positive thing for xAI, as well as for Tesla, because you would have that system into Tesla vehicles, which they haven't really gotten into it in a big way yet. Um, and then what else is there? Oh, there was
While you're on that though, I saw today. I think it might have been Bloomberg. I'm not sure who it was, estimating that XAI will be in XAI, the XAI division, or Grok 3.5, will be in profits by 2027, and
mhm,
OpenAI is not projecting to be in profits until 2029.
mhm. Right, right. So the some other news related to X and the other and to YouTube, like we're doing right now,
Right.
is that Nielsen had that the streaming services, YouTube, Netflix, and all the others, um, have a combined TV share that is 44.8% versus like 42% for broadcasting cable. So that's been dropping, increasing the streaming share by about 6% from last year. So, so basically, you know, more and more media going towards streaming. YouTube growing at about it went from like 9% of share to 12.5% of share. And then
That's
so
because of this
then
program.
that's because of this program, yeah. And then by the next year, that trend continued to be at 15%, and that the broadcasting cable would drop down to like 38% or less. So they continue to shrink there. It's just similar content for a lot of the shows, the TV shows
Yeah,
or sports, but they're moving to streaming. And of course, there's unique content like ours
right.
on YouTube. I think that if the Starlink going to direct to cell phone thing happens, then X will go from having 300 million daily users up to 3 billion
Oh
over
my,
the course of 3 years, which would then, comparable to the 2.5 billion users of YouTube. So X and getting a big YouTube thing should happen over 3 years. And getting YouTube levels of revenue from content and from having a major content platform that will primarily be to cell phones is what I see happening there. So, and that would again accelerate the death of TV
regular television.
and regular television. Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay. I can't wait till I think I'm already off cable. Yeah, I've been off cable for a while. I think I'm free.
Right.
Anyway, all right, Brian. As
Mhm.
always, thank you for coming on. Let me remind everybody that you can have another almost hour of Brian at 7:45 California time tonight, and it is a doozy. Do not
Mhm.
miss it. Hit notify right now so that you don't forget. And remember, if you haven't already set it up to be a subscriber, then you can't hit notify.
Mhm.
So you need to do both of those. And then you can hit the like thing, even if it's just Brian's smile that
Mhm.
gets you. It could be just that much would cause you to
Mhm.
like this particular show. All right, Brian. Again, thanks for coming on. And to all of you
Mhm.
out there, it's been great talking to you.